to NEK-TV Rocks, and my guests today are Ali Howell and Bethany Dunbar. Welcome. Tell us about the organization you're working with.
We would love to.
Mm-hmm. Yay.
So I've been at the Center for an Agricultural Economy for 10 years, and it has existed for 20. So it's celebrating, this year's the 20th anniversary, which is kind of amazing.
It is actually amazing.
And it was started by a group of young entrepreneurs who were in agricultural related businesses who wanted to emphasize local food systems and create a way for everyone to be a part of these local food systems and create jobs. So there was high mowing seeds, Pete's Greens, and Black Dirt Farm. So the whole food cycle was represented among this team. And they wanted more than just what their own businesses. They wanted something that could be for the whole area. And they really were focused in the beginning on creating jobs. Let's create 900 jobs. And they did.
Wow. They've created 900 jobs.
Yes.
That is incredible.
Yeah, it really is. And probably more by now. There was a study done at one point that showed that this had really happened. And, so then kind of the next thought, and all along they were thinking about community as well.
Right.
But not everyone who's involved in local foods is part of the economic side.
Right.
And they purchased a property with an easement on it called Atkins Field that would be open to the public and that could be used by farmers potentially. But it turns out that it's an old granite working site and it's very hard to work the soil. So that turned into a different way of looking at that property, which is Atkins Field. And, you know, fast forward to, I got hired to kind of think about how that property could be well used for the community and ask people, a lot of people, what they thought. And so it's really been a space for community gardens, farmers market. We had an incredible event there last night, thinking about the past and the future. And we have all over time began to realize that we're better with partners. So we basically don't do anything by ourselves. Like we're involved with so many community partners. And I was hoping maybe Ali would get into that part.
Sure.
She will.
Yeah, so I'm a part of the community programs team. Work really closely with Bethany, and I'm basically like a community organizer. And I started 2 years ago, this July, and just it's just been such a tremendous opportunity. I get to do some really cool stuff in a place that I love, which is like the NEK, where I grew up. And so so our partners, we work really closely with the schools. We work closely with like producers, like the farmers that Bethany mentioned, and you know, Northeast Kingdom Organizing, the Civic Standard, and we are always like working like closely with these other folks.
Let's sort of, I'm trying to think how to describe it. It's like a center where people come in and use kitchen space and make things like fermented products. And I've been to a couple of workshops there that were wonderful. So there's a lot of stuff happening, and that building's right in that space, right?
It's around the corner. So our office space, which we're all kind of like sandwiched in there right now, because we've grown so much over the last few years. But we're right in the same building as the Vermont Food Venture Center, which has its own kitchens. There's cold and frozen storage for producers. There's dry, we call it dry storage, just shelving units for storage for like the Hardwick Area Food Pantry, for instance. And obviously we have our own little storage. And there's a kitchen that could be used for workshops. And Jasper Hill Cheese actually has a big chunk of the space where they have a really incredible cold storage room, and also like where they kind of like a cheese making little spot. We also have a huge distribution leg called Farm Connects, and so there's a lot of cross docking there, all in the same space. So there's producers coming in to turn, to make peanut butter or make, veggie
Kimchi.
deli meat, kimchi.
Yes.
We also have this like Just Cut program where we're working with farmers to get like lots of like carrots and potatoes and beets and processed for like hospitals and schools and other institutions, just because there's not enough capacity to peel all the local carrots and get all the dirt off. So they can be actually used in the mess hall of UVM or Dartmouth. And so there's a lot happening in that little space, really.
So a local farm that has a ton of carrots can somehow get them to you, and they can be processed with you, and then they go somewhere else.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
That somehow is the Farm Connects team.
Okay.
So the cutting of the produce started first, and it was an idea to try to get good local produce into schools.
Right.
When the Venture Center first opened in Hardwick, it had existed before in another part of the state.
Yeah.
But this building was really built for that, and we all thought, the farmers will come in and they'll cut up their produce and they'll,
you're delusional, right?
Right. So that didn't happen, but as usual, we can learn from things we didn't know, and so basically, we began to realize that there was a big gap between farmers and getting it processed in order for local institutions to be able to use it. So that's where Just Cut started, and then the Farm Connects project is a trucking arm. It's not a business. It's also a nonprofit. So the farmers are hiring the truck drivers to get their food into, and we're shipping between 170,000 to 200,000 pounds of produce with this Just Cut program.
Isn't that incredible?
It's amazing.
It's amazing.
It's just amazing.
And it's all local produce.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's the piece that's so amazing
Yeah.
and wonderful about this.
Yeah.
Part of what led to you guys sitting here today was that I had Green Mountain Farm to School on. And
Yes,
it's
we
not
work.
the first
That's
time.
one of our
I love
partners.
working with them.
Yeah.
And they kept mentioning the hub, and I'm thinking, I vaguely heard about the hub, tell me more. And then they started to say, wow, we've got to do a show on that, because that just sounds so incredible.
Yeah, it is. And they're a
These are
wonderful partner.
farmers who normally would have such a hard time finding a place for their produce to go, even though we all know that local produce is the best. It's the freshest.
But if you think about a farmer's life, it's enough work to grow it, having to think
Tell me
about the
about it.
marketing and all of the
Right.
rest. And many of the farmers have some marketing or some, but to be able to have that known market, that definite market is going to be huge for them.
Yeah, and to build off of that, we have staff that actually work with farmers on business planning, like out in the community, but also I think are also collaborating with folks who are coming to the Food Venture Center. So there's just lots of different layers of opportunities for support and engagement that we can offer different producers.
And it's not that big a space that you have.
It's not.
I mean, as I said, I did a couple of
we're
workshops
growing.
there. They were so much fun.
Yeah.
But I sort of can't imagine how all of this happens in that space.
It is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of outgrowing our space, I think. We're building, we've got this really big Yellow Barn project in Hardwick. So if anybody's driven to Hardwick in the last couple months, if you're on 14 heading to downtown, you'll see this this fancy looking.
I've seen it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The big. It's now it's less of a gray box. It's got windows and other things, and
it's not yellow yet.
well, yeah. Well, I don't. Yeah. And so we're gonna have just a lot more storage and a bigger community kitchen and office space, and it's gonna expand lots of other opportunities for us. I think for our community programs team, just for having space, and for our producers. I mean, having cold and frozen storage is just it's just so critical.
Yes.
And they talk about the space that the Farm Connects team is using now is just this tiny little, almost like a closet, and they talk about it like Tetris. So in comes all these all these pallets of things, and like, oh, okay, move that out, move this in, and it's just crazy. It's not efficient.
Yeah.
So in that new building, it's just going to be so exciting to be able to just drive a truck in and put things where they go.
What a concept.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Any idea when this will happen?
Yes. So really, well, not exact, but the plan is to be in this winter. We will be having an open house in October,
Okay.
October 5th, in all 3 locations, and the yellow barn, which is the building next to the big gray one, will be open actually this July with Cabot. Cabot is the tenant that's using that space, or the owner. I'm not really sure. It's very complicated. But but Cabot will be using the yellow barn itself, the antique barn.
Yeah.
And that's going to open sooner, and we'll be in hopefully late fall or winter.
I mean, Cabot's a big company.
It is big.
Relatively speaking.
Yes.
I mean, this is Vermont, but relatively speaking, it is.
It has
That's
grown a
pretty
lot.
impressive that they want to be there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that they are, when I was dairy farming years ago, I was a member of Cabot Co-op, and it was really something to be proud of. And people voted for things that would be happening there, and it has grown a lot.
Yeah.
And you see Cabot cheese all over the country.
That's right.
And it's really good.
It's good cheese, too.
Yeah.
Cheese, yeah. And the same is true of Jasper Hill.
I
Jasper Hill's
love
grown
Jasper
so
Hill.
much.
So good.
So they will be using half of that new building
Yeah.
as well. So a lot of what, like with the Vermont Venture Center, if
Yeah.
it wasn't for Jasper Hill as an anchor tenant, all the peanut butter companies and the kimchi people, it would be very hard to be able to serve them with not having someone who's always there,
Right.
being an anchor tenant.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how many people are actually employed in this? I mean, it's beginning to sound like this enormous
I think it's like
production.
34-ish people.
That's
Yeah.
not many.
No, I know.
No, and just not long ago, it was a lot less than that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
grown a lot.
when I started there, it was like 10, but
Yeah.
the Farm Connects piece has
Yeah.
added a lot. And one thing I think we haven't really talked about yet that I was hoping you might is when the pandemic hit,
Yeah.
and we started trying to provide meals for people and helping the restaurants. Do you want
Yeah.
to talk about that?
Yeah, well, I just in our community programs team, there's like 3 other people, right? Or 3-ish. Counting Kate as part of our team.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we have Reeve Basom, who's embedded in the schools and does a lot of like great stuff in collaboration with the Civic Standard, and Haley Williams, who leads the farmers market, who's like, employed as a CA staff person, but is like also leading this other organization, which is the farmers market organization, and is really embedded in that space and doing other food access projects. And I got hired to help manage like this emergency eats program, which when that funding, when the pandemic hit, that's sort of like we were able to create another position to add like a 3rd person in the community programs team, and then like Haley came on, and we've hired other people. So we've just been able to like do more and build and
And you're doing the community organizing piece.
yeah.
What exactly are you organizing?
Yeah, good question. So I'm really I'm embedded closely with Northeast Kingdom Organizing, which was a project of the CAE. About 10 years ago, it started with the listening campaign that Bethany did at the Hardwick Area Food Pantry, and later on it became its own independent nonprofit.
And based in Newport at that point.
Yeah, so I mean that's where I think that's where there was a lot of energy happening in Newport. But we had people like be part of the organization that are across Orleans County.
Yeah, sure.
Right now, a lot of our energy has been centered in the Barton area. Really ever since since the pandemic, and so that's where a lot of our organizing has happened around this another hub called the Barton Hub, and maybe that's what Hillary mentioned.
Yes.
And so from Green Mountain Farmers School, and so we're just sort of like trying to build a space that is like sort of like lifting up the community meals that happen.
Right.
There's a food pantry, trying to like get activities happening, and just having another third space where folks can be. 'Cause, we did a listening camp. We knocked on like a lot of doors, a year or two ago, and talked to about like 400. I think we knocked on like 400 houses and like talked to like everybody at those houses, and we just like heard so much about how these like meals were critical to the community, and so. And we've learned a lot about this space, about these communities, and have like built a lot of relationships over time. And so,
I just read something about Barton Hub and actually reposted it on a social media site, Newport Vermont Rocks, which really made it sound like a community center, which was, wow, this is wonderful.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we've been nagging for one here in Newport for how many years? And never got one. And Barton's doing it.
Barton is doing it.
We're doing it.
Great.
It's so exciting to see.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
Yeah, and it's just sort of like, something I keep talking about is like just how things like germinate, we were part of some of our other leaders in the past, were really really involved in the formation of this community giving garden in Barton, which is kind of like really grown. I'm sure like a lot of people that and has really become just such an energetic, dynamic group, and it's really sparked up a lot of stuff. And they're close partners. We work with Green Mountain Farmers School. Tony Eubanks, the librarian, is like a queen and has the heartbeat of that place. And so we're also just trying to bring in people from the schools, also trying to like build relationships with folks who are coming to the meals and have a little more of attempting to have a little more of a horizontal leadership or avenues where folks can engage and also like direct the work. And so it's and so right now we work really closely with this senior meal site, this organization that oversees these meal sites, and they're going through another transition, and so again, but it's opened up an opportunity where they're like, we cannot do 2 meals a week in Barton anymore, and so we. I work really closely with Northeast Kingdom Organizing on this project. And we are like, let's see if we can get people to like take on a Thursday meal. And so we've had every week, the last last month through August, we've had different, local organizations taking on a Thursday meal. The Glover Equity Committee, the Barton Community Giving Garden, Westmore Association, like all these different partners. And it's been really great to, the CAE has been able to, thanks to a really generous donor, we've been able to provide ingredients, like funding for ingredients to make it easy for folks to just to take on that. So it's been really exciting. It's a lot of work, and Newport should absolutely have a community center.
Yes, definitely. And we can follow Barton, because if you guys can bring that impetus to keep that ball rolling.
And there's other models too. I think the Civic Standard is like somebody like we like admire, and it's just, I think it's also depends on the community, what the community is. And I think the work of community organizing is to suss that out by like listening in relationships and sharing stories and just that hard work that it can take a really long time, but can have like the most meaningful impact, at least like in my experience. So
we talk we talk about a snowflake style of leadership instead of a sun where all the emphasis is going to one person, right? The snowflake is, okay, somebody starts something and there's a little branch and there's a little branch, and pretty soon it's huge. And I think that's a lesson I certainly learned early on at CAE, with our first project with the Hardwick Food Pantry, the first project that I did was the Grow Your Own workshop series, and that's still going. And the reason it's still going is not yours truly. I mean, I'm still helping with
You
it.
can have some credit.
Okay. But I mean, seriously, I couldn't do it unless we had the food pantry and all the different people who have stepped up.
And community interest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And clearly you've got that going.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I think community organizing, like the skills and practices and values particularly, are something that I see really, something the CAE has really embraced.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think that has been like some real magic, and that we have a leader and leaders that really embrace that. So it's not just like, our team, but we have folks, leaders above us who are really supportive and embracing and are curious and Hardwick's an incredible place. Yeah, and Hardwick is an incredible place. Like if you put on a community meal, which we are doing now at Atkins on Monday nights, people show up to it. If it is just food. I mean, it's just, there's such an interesting readiness for change in the Hardwick community, like this energy that I remember, like I live in Derby Line, I grew up in Newport Center, and it's just such an exciting place to work. And I think it's a good model, a good story for the rest of this place, because I think the story of Hardwick, it's the economic decline, just the decline it's gone through, like so many of our communities, and it's totally on this upswing, and it's because of a lot of different things, and there's a lot of excitement happening. So
I mean, it's really interesting coming into Hardwick, which I don't do that often, but when I do, it's never the same place twice. So you see a lot of activity and stores opening on the main drag, and then some close, and it quietens down again, and then it comes back. And then the co-op moved, and that's now a much bigger space that pulls people in.
Yeah, and with
And
the
then there's
rail
you guys.
trail, there's
The rail
us,
trail
the
is
rail
gorgeous.
trail. It's amazing. I think it's going to be just a huge.
You have something with a little hiking path and a book hub at the bottom of it, something like that.
The Hardwick Trails.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of people have talked to me about that and just said how wonderful it was to be sort of walking down and then suddenly seeing this little book hut. Oh wow, I can take a book.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
It is, and I just like, it's not. I've often thought about the differences between Hardwick and Barton as someone who grew up in Craftsbury with Hardwick jokes.
Yeah.
I mean, Hardwick was so run down, but Hardwick was able to build, and I see it happening in Barton now. It's so exciting. And so I feel like any community, it's not like a Hardwick thing.
Right.
It's like, okay, what can we do together? It's like bringing people together and not complaining about everything that's gone wrong in the past, but let's look ahead. What can we do together with what we have?
And considering that Barton got devastated last summer.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hardwick
washed
too.
away.
Hardwick did
Yeah.
too, yeah.
Yeah.
It's been really hard on a lot of folks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, these were homes that, we know. I know a lot more about floods than I did.
Never wanted to.
Than I did, a year ago today. But there's so many homes that are built on affordable housing, low-income housing. It's built on floodplains because it's cheap land, which makes sense. So it's people who are already on a tightrope.
Yeah.
Got
Washed
really
away.
rocked.
Yeah.
Really, really, really rocked. And so, but I think because. NECO had all these, because we, and in partnership, like Bethany has been a long time partner too, we had all of these relationships and these phone numbers. We started making phone calls. Same thing with Hardwick, and just like in a lot of our communities, like the CAE, the Civic Standard, the town, we just, and this is what happened in the pandemic, is we just reacted, and, started making food, started getting meals out, started making phone calls, and just, it's, I think with these like disasters, we've been very good at sort of being able to sort of like pick up and and react to a disaster.
It's sort of been a safe space, a base for
that's
people
such a
with
nice
a really good
here.
idea to come to you and say,
Yeah.
I've got this idea, but I can't do it in my kitchen at home. It's too tiny. It wouldn't meet the health standards. And suddenly, there's your space.
Yeah. That's so
That
nice
was what
to
was
hear.
so exciting when I walked in there,
Yeah.
as well as the lunar moths that were around the door. That was
Yeah.
an amazing visual.
Yeah.
If you arranged for that, I much appreciated it. But
I don't have any say over lunar moths. But they are gorgeous.
Was it the workshop? The workshop you did, was it at
that was
Atkins
one of the
Field?
ones.
It was at the Venture Center.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
okay.
think, right?
Yes.
So they
Yeah,
were,
I did a couple there.
Yeah.
It was, wow, this place
Yeah.
is amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
But what it just offered this place for people to come with their great ideas.
Yeah.
And we talk a lot too about shared learning as
Yeah.
opposed to, oh, I'm the expert and I'm just going to teach you everything.
Yeah, right.
It's been so lovely with Grow Your Own. That's kind of been such a wonderful model of like, well, who knows how to teach kimchi in this town, and
Right.
let's get that person in. And so, yeah, I think that helps build that trust within our community that we're trying to lift up everybody. We're not trying
Yeah.
to say, okay, I'm here to teach you this or that.
Yeah, and just like build the power of like building relationships and like, yeah, listen to folks, sharing your story, and around food is like a theme I feel like I've seen, and it's really powerful. It just sounds so like
Food's
it's
such
too
a great
easy.
place to
It's
start.
it's too easy, but it's
Yes.
I just there was a community meal that happened in Hardwick for like 30 years, like really famously, and it's like, and I just right now. There's a community meal on Wednesday nights at the Civic. Right now, Mondays at Atkins, and twice a month at the Hardwick Community Church.
Yeah.
And it's just there's all these like really interesting ways, really neat ways to like show up and like get to know your neighbors, and get a meal. And that's been like a really big learning for me coming
Right.
here. And which is why we like are committed to doing
Yeah.
more of these things. And
I mean, so many of us connect around food.
yeah,
I mean, you have a book which is about food.
Thank
Food
you.
is art.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Beautiful. There's a Facebook group, Cooking Through COVID.
yeah,
Isn't that
Which
cool?
I
love
don't
that
really
thing.
participate in,
Yeah.
but I love reading.
Me too. Me
yeah.
too.
And
Yeah.
people like Ali post these gorgeous photos.
Well, that is like my love language. I mean, that is like my favorite. I feel most myself when I can like. I do a lot of. I send a lot of emails, and I'm on the computer a lot. And but I totally feel most myself when I'm like peeling potatoes or like standing over a stove or, and it's been really cool to do these Thursday meals because I've, my co-conspirator Meg Whalen from NEK-TV and I've been sort of taking on one or two here and there, and it's just like, it just feels good to just like, even if this, the prep table is like way too small, so your back feels like it's like in pain, and the stove is like needs to be like replaced, and it's just like the best. It's the best, and it's the best way. That's where you get like really. The good stuff is when you can stand around a table and like prepare a meal and
Right.
just talk.
Yeah.
And so I kind of, it's like my favorite. And I'm really lucky that we get to, we feel really lucky that we get to do stuff like that. That's our job. It's like the coolest.
I get paid for doing this.
Yeah. And like our coworker Reeve,
I was just thinking of Reeve.
and she has a really cool class, and you'll love this, Pam. She kind of co-teaches a class with a staff member at Hazen and the Civic Standard on a class called Recipe for Human Connection. And it's like a reimagined, I always call it a reimagined home economics class.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's really like this container for kids to like, for young people to like be and like be together and build relationships and those social emotional connections through food. And so, sometimes they're making like, sometimes you go in like everybody's making a different kind of like chocolate chip cookie or something.
And you have to taste them all. What a hardship.
Yeah, I know. But they plan and execute a community meal in Hardwick once a month, and that's something they went.
Yeah.
It happened because they went on a field trip to a community meal in town, and the kids were like, "We want to do this," And so they do it every month in the school year. And so,
And not only that, but in the summer, often the same students who have no obligation
Come back?
will come back.
Oh, that's great.
And they will, because the CAE staff does it on the 3 months when they're not in session, and often they'll be like, "Can we?" And I'm like, yes, we. It's so much fun to work with these teenagers on their own, on their own time,
Sure.
not getting any school credit, and just wanting to
And having fun.
and
Yeah.
making food and
Yeah.
giving back.
Yeah.
yeah, and like
It's
having a
really-
meal together. And
Having a
so,
meal together.
Yeah.
and so, it's cool. And they work on like a Pies for the People project with a partnership with the food pantry, where the food pantry, the Hardwick Food Pantry rallies community members to donate homemade pies to get sent out with Thanksgiving boxes.
Oh, nice.
It's so cool. And so the school, the kids will make like a bunch of pie crusts, and we'll make pies, and so it's like
Everybody makes pie.
it's amazing.
Well, everybody eats pies.
That's
yeah. And so like
Yeah.
that's just like it's part of a culture. It
Yeah.
was just so neat.
Yeah. How do people get involved with you?
Good question. You can reach out to us. I think there's gonna be a
email.
Yeah,
Yeah.
email us. Yeah.
So I
we
presume
have
you
a-
want volunteers.
Oh, we totally want volunteers. There's a newsletter, so people could start by signing up for that and seeing what's going on. But yeah, email Allie or I. I
Yeah.
think our email will show up on this.
Yes. And your website will be attached to
Yes.
this when it goes
Yeah.
out.
And
so.
they could start by just coming to a community meal and
Yeah.
introducing themselves.
Yeah.
And there's so many ways. We definitely have, the community garden if they're in town. I mean, some people drive in from Morrisville, but mostly it's folks in Hardwick
Right.
that want to grow some food there. And making a pie, anyone could do that. That could be, doesn't matter where you are if you're willing to bring it down.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and email, newsletter. North Student Organizing has a newsletter too, we're on social media that we're in the CAE, and so there's lots of ways to find out at us. But showing up to a community meal has to be the best way to
And you eat too.
and can eat and just get to know us and
not just meeting us, but all the other people.
Yeah.
So show up for a meal and then you can meet more people.
And when are these meals? Thursdays?
The Atkins one is Mondays.
Okay.
And that's only through August 12th.
Yeah.
It's sort of a trial summer to see if we can pull this off. The Thursday meals at the United Church are the 3rd and 4th, right? Am I getting that right?
I think so, yeah.
3rd and 4th Thursdays at the United Church in Hardwick, and the Civic Standard, which we've mentioned briefly, in the old Hardwick Gazette building, has a meal every Wednesday. What am I forgetting?
Well, the Barton Hub, there's
yeah.
a meal twice a week.
Yeah.
And there's Tuesdays and Thursdays at noon. And right now, the Glover Barton Action Centers, which is the senior nonprofit organization, they're taking on they do those meals. And they also cook a meal in Glover, which is down the road on Wednesdays at the Glover Town office. And then, we're kind of organizing meals to continue on Thursdays. And sometimes it's us, and sometimes it's another community partner that's stepping in. And so that's been it's really
So
fun.
it just gets covered no matter what.
Yeah,
far,
I
so
mean,
good.
so far so good. Yeah. but because of our relationships and that's organizing. That's what we're organizing right now. So anybody can show up, and we're also looking to get activities going. And so, if folks are really interested in playing cards or board games or bone builders or art, or we're also it used to be a really happening place with lots and lots of people and lots of activities, and we're trying to build that little by
because
little.
COVID took the heart out of so many things.
It did,
I mean, it did what it did, but the hard part is the rebuilding the confidence to come back out again.
That's right.
And that's across the board. I mean, that's kids as well as adults.
Yes,
It is.
especially kids were hard hit by that.
Yeah, and also I'd be remiss if I forgot this, but transportation is like huge.
Tell
Even
me
like,
about it.
there's a lot of elder housing in Barton.
Yeah.
And something that we hear is that like folks can see the Barton Memorial Building where the meals are happening, but they can't get there because the sidewalks are not in great shape and their mobility is poor, and like, they're they just like they can't drive.
Right.
And so it's like, even though it's like in they can see it, it's that close.
can't
it's
reach
just
it.
can't reach it. And I think that it's just so it's transportation is like an issue that we're always like trying to like think about and try to organize around.
That's across
and
the whole of the Northeast Kingdom.
Totally.
It very much is.
Yeah.
I would say there is a huge advocate in our rural community transport now. Caleb is the executive director, is very strongly trying to get some micro routes going and
Good.
stuff for. I feel like he's got the right mindset, and hopefully he'll be able to make that happen.
Yeah.
Because we don't have any here in Newport either. I mean, it's
hard.
pathetic. Yeah. Lose your ability to drive and you're totally done
just
for.
Totally done for.
Yeah.
And that was the listening project you did at the Hardwick Area Food Pantry
Yes.
years
Yeah.
ago,
Yep.
10 years ago, asking, just trying to inquire about the socioeconomics around food access. And transportation came up.
Yes.
Yeah, out of 120 people I talked to in that original listening campaign, I think all but 10 mentioned transportation.
Right.
And I met a fellow who had come for his monthly food at the food pantry, and he was going to have to put it into a shopping cart and push it through the
Snow.
slush and snow and ice to get it back to the place where he lived. And it's just like, this is, I think our food systems are actually better than our transportation systems.
Yes, I agree.
Because it's taken a while for kind of that realization or understanding, and hopefully that will be followed by more attention and more funding to transportation. And I would say that Food Connects is providing a system that wasn't there for the food to get places, but it's the people now that we have to get places.
So when you've finished doing the job in Hardwick and Barton, would you please come into Newport and help us? It
Yeah.
would be great. It really would.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're out of time.
Well, that went fast.
Yeah.
Gee, that's usually my line. It's true, it always does. But I'd love you to come back.
We can do
And now that you've done it once, it won't be so awful next time.
that. It wasn't awful at
No,
all.
this was awesome.
No, I know.
Thank you.
It really is fun, and thank you so much for coming in. And I really want to come to one of your community meals.
You should,
Please
actually.
do.
Yeah.
Please
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
I will.
Awesome.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.